So I think we have a quorum. So if I could get our committee members to turn on their video. I'll call this meeting to order at 4:04. This meeting is being recorded, and I would ask for a roll call. So, Phil, do you want to turn your email or video on? I'm going in order on my screen. Phil, are you here? No. Okay, must have connection issues. Okay, Aaron?
Present.
Kevin Monahan?
Present.
Steve Dukran?
Present.
Marcia Rasmussen?
Present.
Stephen Crane present. That's 5. I think we are a 9-member committee. Phil Posner, are you present? Phil, are you present? Guess not. Again, it seems like he's having connection issues. So we'll go through. We'll begin anyway. So we have a diminished number of members here. I will say we did receive the resignation from the committee of Wally Johnston. As you know, Wally and our former select board liaison moved out of town. So Wally formally resigned from the committee. And our new liaison is Terry Ackerman, who is here with us. So, I guess I'll go. Phil, are you here just for in terms of calling the roll and moving forward with committee business?
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, Phil Posner.
Okay, I'm here now on my phone instead of my computer.
Okay. All right. So the next item would be approval of the minutes. We did receive some comments from Mark and Tanya Galis, who had requested some edits to the minutes. I think it's not that, the minutes are a documentation of what was said, not what was meant to be said. And so I think in terms of making changes to the minutes after the fact, I am kind of torn about, how far do we go, especially for changes to public comments as opposed to committee deliberations. So I think what I'd like to do is circulate the minutes, the draft minutes and the comments to the committee and give you the opportunity to review the recording of the meeting. It's only a few comments, so it won't take that long. And then have you decide if you feel like the suggested comments are in order, or if the minutes as originally drafted document what was said. Certainly the clarifying, I would encourage the Galises to clarify their comments in public comment today, but in terms of the official documentation of the meeting, I just think it can be, a little, I don't know, a little questionable in terms of we're kind of, I don't say rewriting history, but it's supposed to be what was said. But certainly if they want to clarify here in public comment today, they're welcome to do that. But I want the input of the rest of the committee in terms of making the changes. And since we just got them today and you haven't had a chance to review it and look back at what was said, I would defer unless someone wants to make a motion to approve the minutes as distributed. I would just say we'll hold off and do them at the next meeting. And Meryl, I see you're here. Can you announce yourself? You have to unmute.
Yes, I am here. I'm sorry. I was.
Okay, I don't hear a motion to approve the minutes as drafted, so I'll assume that we're all okay taking a look at the comments and maybe going back and looking at what was said and just seeing how we feel. It's not, like I said, it's not about clarifying the comments. It's just about what the minutes are supposed to be for any, not just the Transportation Advisory Committee, for any meeting. And just say, and then if we feel like the minutes accurately document what was said, then I would encourage the commenters to clarify at a future meeting. But it's good. It's a bit of housekeeping, but I also think it's important that we set the right precedent for this committee. And I also believe that it should be the case for every committee that, that history isn't rewritten in between, after the fact or in between meetings. So I guess we will move on to the third agenda item, which is the traffic speed update. We talked about this a little bit at the last meeting. And so I guess, Steve Dukrin, are you prepared to talk about your thoughts on a traffic study for the town?
Yes, Stephen. We talked about having a town-wide traffic study because the current one, or the one that speed limits are based on, is very old. And we just have to find, come with a plan of how we're going to fund it. It is a big undertaking. You're going to hire a consultant and, come with a scope that they can at least meet the needs of the town in terms of which corridors we have the problems. We have had complaints from several different corridors, and unless we determine how to go about this, we wouldn't have any answers. I think, Stephen, you two were also going to be talking to town council regarding some of the interpretations I've been hearing from certain members of this committee.
We did have that conversation, and I think we talked about it maybe 2 meetings ago. In terms of I do have some input from council and I think traffic studies can still govern in certain areas, as opposed to the 25-mile-per-hour zone. And I think what we discovered, I think the reason why we're here is that at the end of that conversation, we decided a traffic study, a speed study, still has merit, even with the legislation that was in fact adopted by town meeting. That it wasn't as clear cut for every street.
Right. So if it's a matter of identifying how we're going to fund this, and then coming up with a scope of work and advertise for a consultant to be hired. So if we have the, we have the blessing, we can go about looking for that funding. And
so can you talk a little bit more about the scope of such, I think I'm familiar with what it is. I know Kevin is. So maybe talk a little bit about what the type of scope would be and how they would go about it, what we learned, just very generally, Steve.
So traffic studies or speed studies that determine speed limits, they have to follow the state's guidelines because they have to be approved by the Department of Transportation. And so it requires hiring a consultant to not just record speeds out there, but to do what's called time-based limits. And you drive the corridor in one direction and the other, and a number of times, and you look for varying speeds and what, and actually one of the parameters is what people are actually traveling at, because the premise is the speed limit should be the speed that cars can travel comfortably at. Now, obviously, you have people traveling comfortably at excessive speeds, but that's not the whole point. The point is that if the road is designed for a higher speed and there are uses of the, along the corridor that can tolerate the higher speeds, then a higher speed limit will result as recommended speed limit. But fortunately, we know that most uses alongside a road, like a park, a school, we have high pedestrians, those will probably dictate a lower speed. And so that's the kind of thing that you want to put in the scope of work when you put out for a contract. And but certainly following what the state has put out there as guidelines, and be able to put together the study report, present to the state, wait for the reviews, probably some back and forth, and then whatever the end result is, they will have to be adopted by our elected body in town.
Meryl, I just want to ask one follow-up question, Steve, and I'll come right to you. I think when we talked about this, and I think it was a couple months ago, we had certain areas that had speed studies as a part of the cut-through report, but not all of them. And so I shouldn't assume, but I guess I'll ask, would part of the scope be a peer review of those studies, or would those areas not be included?
So that study that was done, or those studies that were done, were not really studies designed for speed limits. There were studies like what the police department will do on a regular basis, measuring what the 85th percentile travel speed is. So they were simple studies. That work will be incorporated into the overall comprehensive study, but I don't think that's near enough of what the work is needed to do a complete traffic study that will result in a change of speed.
Okay.
Speed limit.
Sorry, Meryl?
Oh, I only wanted to add that I'm not sure that we are looking at the issue of only speed, though. I mean, it's really, or is it the use of our roadways in terms of, overall traffic? I mean, there are portions of town which have just had, the usage has just increased so much that there has to be some consideration of speed in relationship to the number of cars, and what other usages, we have to consider. Like the center of town has pedestrian crossings, pool crossings. I think that just doing a speed study is, I'm really asking whether that will take into account how the road is currently being used.
And to me, the answer is yes. The consultant that's hired will look at not just the roadside uses, but also how the road is used. Certainly the downtown area where you have a lot of pedestrian activity, that will be part of the consideration.
Mhm.
And And we do have the ability, well, we already have it, the adoption of the 25-mile-per-hour speed zone for business districts and heavily settled areas. So those won't be interfered with, those will remain. We're talking about zones that are beyond the 25-mile-per-hour zone currently.
Yep. Okay, Phil?
So I absolutely agree that it's necessary for us to hire a consultant. And I think the scope of work needs to be examined. I think one of the things that's missing from this conversation is that, not to disrespect anybody, but the way that the state DOT and the Federal Department of Transportation view municipal roads is not about the convenience of the driver. That is a doctrine that is basically ready to hit the trash can. The focus of how streets are used in current state and federal policy is for the safety of all road users, not for the convenience of motorists. And speed limits and road design, et cetera, are set based on that criteria, not on how fast you can go. So I think it would be very helpful to have a consultant come in and help the town staff understand what the current standards are, how things are done, how things get funded, and how we can proceed it basically in tandem with both the state and the federal government as we move forward. So I absolutely agree. My thinking is that it would probably be a good idea for town staff to spend some time reviewing the contemporary standards. And I'd be happy to provide links, videos, et cetera, to the information that's at my disposal.
So I think I agree with you, Phil, that I think the scope of work is the place where we can really customize this study for our roads and how we know our roads are used generally, and also what we see as the future use of our roads. And so I don't know, Steve Dukrin, I mean, I guess I would say if the next step is to develop a scope of work for the committee's review, is that a reasonable statement?
That does sound like a good first step.
Would we draft that in-house, Steve, or do you want to, or do we want to engage? We have an on-call civil engineering firm, traffic firm. Do we want to engage them to help us along with this, or do you think we can draft this in-house?
You know, because we have the access to that on-call services, we should use that with, you know, to help us put this together.
So I guess so I guess I do want to. I think we should memorialize this as kind of a first step, and so I would entertain a motion to request a draft scope of services for a traffic / for speed study, a townwide speed study.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
A second.
Okay, so the motion is made by Phil Posner and seconded by Kevin Monahan. Aaron, is that clear? That motion?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
I just have a quick question. What is the name of the engineering firm that's on call?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm sure Steve will take this conversation and relay it back to them.
Okay,
So,
if you maybe circulate his requests so that we know who they are.
understanding that communication with the consultant would go through the engineering department.
Understood. Just want to know who.
Any further discussion? Okay, I will do a roll call vote based on my screen. Aaron McCloskey,
Yes.
Kevin Monahan,
Yes.
Marcia Rasmussen,
Yes.
Steve Duggan,
Yes.
Merrill Schwartz,
Yes.
Phil Posner,
Yes,
and Stephen Crane, yes. Good. Steve Duggan, good idea. I think this is something that's gonna, just to manage expectations, I think this is something that's gonna take a while to pull together. It's a lot of data collection. There's a procurement process, but I do think this is something that'll guide our decision-making for 20 years. Especially when the last one was, when did you say it was done, Steve?
I think in the 50s, 90s.
Yeah, so we wrung 70 years out of the last one, so we'll see what we can get out of this one. Okay, so next, any further discussion about traffic speed? All right, hearing none. Next item is Junction Park cycle and pedestrian issue. This is kind of an update. We have the stencils in, and truth be told, we want to do kind of a demonstration of it, just to kind of like in the back corner of Kai's Road in the CPW yard, try it out. The rain has really prevented us from doing that. So I think if we can stay dry for a couple of days, Aaron, I don't know if you wanted to report on the timeline of that at all.
Yes, so we do have the stencils, received those a week before we had all the rain. So we do want to test it out. This is the first time for us of kind of painting a stencil or something like this in town. So we want to make sure we get it right. We're gonna, like Stephen Crane said, we're gonna demo it out, test out a couple different color options and see how they look. We're also open to, we're trying to figure out and trying to finalize what the color scheme is going to be for the stencil and what's appropriate for that location, and open to input from obviously this committee. And in addition to that, we do have the signs that were ordered. Those did arrive as well, and we're gonna get those on the schedule to install at the locations that we had shared with the committee previously on the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay. I think for committee members, if there's interest in seeing that, the planning and zoning boards do in situations like this is they post a site visit meeting. We could do that, or if people just wanted to, if we gave people a deadline after they're on the ground, Aaron would notify me, and then we would notify the rest of the committee that they're painted, and people can set up a time. But just we don't generally have people walking through the CPW yard. It is a workplace. There's lots of trucks going back and forth. So we probably, now that I'm talking myself into a site visit meeting actually, so it's kind of guided. And so once it's down, we would set up a meeting, just a site visit meeting to go look at them and kind of talk about how we feel about the colors, and certainly we could invite members to the public to come along to that as well.
Absolutely. We can put them in a location that is outside of the yard area and more in the public parking lot area, and maybe cone it off. So it's a safe environment, places to park or walk.
Sure. So we can get feedback on what colors people feel would work well. And then, I think that's fine. I think we can, I know it's vacation season, so setting up a site visit meeting may be tough with people's schedules. We can try that. And if there's not enough people to really do that, then we would just invite people to go by on a certain day. But I guess stay tuned for communication on that.
And as of right now, I think that so people are aware, in case of one of the colors would be like a white yellow or a white green, seeing what would be appropriate, what looks aesthetically pleasing.
Well, and gets noticed.
Right.
As noticeable. I think we want to get the stuff down as soon as possible. The Assabet Bridge project, as everybody knows, is moving forward. Not the Assabet River Bridge, the Route 2. The Route 2 bridge is moving forward. So I think we want to get these on the ground. So I would just encourage Aaron and his team to get them done. Let us know when they're dry, and we'll get word out that people can stop by and check them out and offer a place where people can provide feedback.
I anticipate we're going to try to target to have them on the ground for next week at some point, Stephen. So we'll send a note to you once that's done.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, great. Thank you. Okay. Any questions, comments about the Junction Park item?
just have one comment, which I think what makes sense is we should, in a kind of orderly fashion after the signage is installed, have follow-ups to observe how well it's working in the field.
Mhm.
We can, evaluate that in
Yeah.
the fall. When,
Yeah, I think we've done some data collection to kind of set a baseline pre-bridge. And I think you're right. I think and minimally, we'll want to collect some data and find when the right time to do that is.
Yep.
But also, make sure we're kind of watching anecdotally to see how people are behaving.
Yep. I think that's right on.
Yeah, good. Okay. Is this, I guess I was gonna say, could we wait till public comment, Dory? Do you want to go ahead now?
It's your choice.
Is it a question or a comment?
It's a comment.
Okay, why don't we hold off then and just get through the agenda and we can get to, because I know there's other stuff and I know there's other public, I assume there's other public comments that are intended to be made. So, all right, just so if that's it on Junction Park, we'll go to Sudbury Road crosswalk. Steve, I'm looking at you again.
Yeah, okay. So a quick update on where we are with that project. At the last meeting, we discussed that the contractor's bid, the low bid actually, came in at $140,000, which is about $50,000 more than the engineer's estimate. And noting that the completion grant portion for that project was only $20,000. So that additional funding was finally approved at a town meeting. So the project is fully funded. And so currently we're waiting on the contractor to execute a contract. He is deliberating the schedule and the amount of time it will take, knowing that we are awarding this contract a couple of months after the bid was received. And so he's looking at his availability and to be able to get it done in time. We're hoping that that contract will be, completely executed soon so he can get working. We think he can start in August and he will take 6 to 7 weeks to finish, but that yet has to be confirmed. But we're staying on him, try to get this thing going as soon as possible.
He understands that we want to target the opening of school for completion.
Yeah, we may not be able to achieve the very opening, but it's after that.
Okay. But he's still on board, no issues of price, just mobilization, timing, and everything else. Otherwise we're all good.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions from the committee about that? Okay. I see a hand raised. Is it a question or a comment, Steve Ledoux?
Question.
Okay.
I know you can't really anticipate the start of the project, but do you anticipate that traffic will be like one lane going down Sudbury during construction, or both lanes will be kept open? How is that going to be managed?
We haven't obtained a traffic management plan yet. That will be part of the submittal at the very beginning, which we will discuss with the police department. I think for some of the work, they will be able to maintain 2 lanes of traffic. At other times, it may be down to 1 lane. We will make sure that they're not working during the rush hour traffic, the mornings and evenings, or at least we're going to have 2 lanes open during those periods of time. But we don't have a traffic plan yet. We should be getting that at the very beginning of the work.
Okay, because my follow-up question, I think you've answered, is that, I would anticipate unless both lanes are open, like during rush hour, that people would be cutting through the Canantum neighborhood, Heaths Bridge to Valley to Garfield down to 117 and vice versa, which, we're pretty rural neighborhood with pretty narrow roads. So that's good news if you can keep both lanes open during the rush.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so our next item is the bicycle subcommittee number of members discussion. I guess I would, Steve, can you lower your hand? Sorry.
Actually, I'm leaving.
something I said.
But there are too many meetings in my life, sorry.
So the bicycle subcommittee members discussion, just to tease that up for our bicycle subcommittee chair. The current structure is 3 members, and they are John Arena and Kevin Monahan and Phil Posner. John did contact me saying he had a conflict he couldn't get out of, which is why he's not here tonight. So I guess the discussion then is, do we want a bigger subcommittee, including members of the public that are not a part of the Transportation Advisory Committee? I think I'd expressed early on that I felt like committees worked better and, or more, I don't know, more efficiently, but I think I've seen enough examples of it in Concord where now I think I have confidence that we can benefit from having some additional subcommittee members. I also think relying on 3 people to do what is going to be a pretty big job would be a challenge. So I guess I'll turn it over to the subcommittee chair for his views. Phil?
Thank you, Stephen. A couple of things. I agree that having members of the public who are not necessarily part of the Transportation Advisory Committee as part of the subcommittees is probably a good idea. I have reached out to a number of people who might be interested, and I believe that at least one woman has submitted a green card. And I'm hopeful that a second woman who I think lives down in somewhere around 9 Acre Corner, that she'll also submit a green card. I'm not sure if you have any information regarding the numbers of people who might have submitted green cards. Do you happen to have that?
No, I don't think that. I guess I don't, and I didn't view it as germane to the number of people we were going to expand the committee. If we wanted to expand the committee, it would be a number that we feel is a right size number, and then we would market the available positions and get green cards. I guess that's how I guess I view that as horse before cart.
Okay. All right. Well, let me, I'll just throw in just as a point of information that I did do a survey of the rosters of similar in the adjoining towns. Generally, they're between 7 and 9 people. I think that Lexington actually has something like 11 or 13 people. They have quite a large committee. But generally, bicycling committees seem to have somewhere between 7 or 9. I think we discussed the last time that 7 seemed to be a reasonable number for Concord, and I think that's fine. And my hope is that we can come to an agreement and then make a recommendation to the select board. And I think the select board needs to act, but maybe you can tell me if that's not correct.
For what?
I think the select board needs to say, yes, we need to expand the committee or, expand the numbers.
This committee makes that decision.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think 7 would be a good idea. And my hope is that we can agree on that and then reach out to the public and see if we can get ourselves hitting the ground in the fall.
Are there concerns about having an 8 or 9 member committee and then a 7-member subcommittee?
Well, the only thing that I would say is that the subcommittee would not be a sort of a voting member of this committee. They'd simply be making observations, gathering information. So, I don't think that the number would necessarily have any impact on the tax work. And I do think that having a larger committee makes it a lot easier to have, not only to have regular quorums, but also to delegate work to people, because at least some of the work that needs to get done, I think, is data collection and information gathering. Just if it's not like raw data of number of bicycles, it's preparing surveys and reaching out to people and trying to gather information, stuff like that. So the more warm bodies that we have doing that kind of work, I think the easier it will be for all of us. And then all of that information would be recapped and then provided to the TAC for the tax consideration.
Any thoughts on that from the committee?
I'm hearing crickets.
It's not for the lack of not having a thought. It has to do with scheduling and making sure that you have people at the table. You can get the same level of support if you with outside individuals. So you don't always have to have them members of a subcommittee in order to get projects accomplished. And so, if you have 7, 4 is what you would need. If you go up to 8 or 9, then you have to have 5. 7's probably a better number than 8 or 9, but I'm just questioning the need when the town already has over 65 different boards and committees and task forces that are being staffed and work being done to tap 5, however many more people to participate in a subcommittee, because you can't use people who are currently serving on other boards and committees. So it would require new individuals to begin participating.
I would think that maybe 5 people in the committee may be better off than 7. I think 7 may be a kind of a high number for us to work with. It's my opinion.
Any other thoughts on that? I don't think there's one right answer. I think if we're an 8 or 9, I think we're a 9-member committee, having one subcommittee being 7 is, and having only 2 or 3 members of this committee beyond that committee can get. I see the opportunity for things to go a little rogue, and I think that could be counterproductive in some ways. I do know that if we did make this expansion, I think we would have somebody from the schools who would serve on it, who's not a member of the committee. And I think I think John Arena, not to speak for him, but I think his role on the bicycle subcommittee, I think, has been hard to sustain anyway. So I think we would have a new opportunity there. But
Can I also make a suggestion? Maybe somebody from the rec department might be a good fit too.
Yeah, I think I guess, is there any, I don't know, is there any thought of starting with 5? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
I just have one question. Is there and just for a refresher, because it's been a few meetings since the bicycle subcommittee was formed, but is there a specific charter or mission of the subcommittee? Or is there a specific task that they're asked to kind of assess and bring forward recommendations, or is it a general bicycle subcommittee that we're going to have kind of indefinitely as long as a TAC exists?
Did you guys? I think the bicycle subcommittee was going to, I think, work on that, Phil. Did I recall that correctly? But it was a hard. Kevin and John's schedules and everything else made it so I don't think that ever came together.
I think that's correct. I can say that we had cribbed a charge for a bicycling committee from the town of Lincoln, which was very comprehensive, and that would give us a good head start in terms of the tasks and the responsibilities. So when we have an opportunity to meet, we have a good leg up in terms of a charter, so to speak.
So
not an example you could peddle here.
Pardon me?
I said you have an example that you could peddle here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I probably can. Unfortunately, I had to move over to my phone instead of having my computer. But what I can do is I can circulate amongst the group the suggested charge of a bicycling committee that ribbed from the town of Lincoln and then presented a couple of years. And I
Sure.
think that would give everybody an opportunity to at least see what was done. And, you know, there are quite a number of different tasks, you know, which would include, for example, data collection, also advocacy, you know, trying to serve as a sort of the interagency, the liaison for dealing with the specific issues that people have when they're trying to get around town on a bike. And some of those issues really do cross jurisdiction. So, I mean, there's lots of stuff that CPW and the CPD both have jurisdiction over. And, you know, it's not always, I think, at the top of everybody's agenda as to how to make things comfortable for people when they're trying to cross Route 2, for example. So the role of the committee might be to say, let's figure out a comfortable way to get across from West Concord to Concord Center on Route 62 or on Baker Ave, and let's make a project of that. So, you know, that's an example of that. And the idea would be to draw the various agencies down and outside agencies into the conversation.
So that's what this committee's for. And so I think what we would do is have a bicycle subcommittee that would review things and identify areas and priorities and things that should be addressed. And then they would recommend that this committee addresses them. That's why we constructed this committee the way we did. It's because we have all the jurisdictions kind of represented. So I don't want to duplicate that effort. I think that type of work you just described, which needs to be done, Phil, I completely agree with you. I think we should be doing that here, but certainly what are the top priorities for the cycling, and I mean the cycling community, like the high speed, you know, hardcore cycling community. I mean the spectrum of the cycling community. What are the priorities that we should consider? And I guess I would hope that would be the primary mission of the subcommittee.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just spit out in response to that. The primary matter is always safety for us. It's always safety. That is always the number one thing. And of course, you want to encourage people to do it. You want people to be healthy, but no matter what, it's always safety. And how that plays out in any particular matter is something that, you know, ultimately the committee would wrestle with, and then the agencies would.
Sure. So by kind of a nod of heads, is there consensus that we should expand this bicycle subcommittee and invite non-TAC members to participate? Is that, we're generally in agreement with that? So now we're just saying, is it 5, 6, 7, you know, that amount? I don't know if maybe, I guess my gut says that a 5-member committee as a place to start would be maybe, would be easier to populate. I think right now, as we sit here, it's the only, I think John is going to resign or be reassigned from the bicycle subcommittee. So the only 2 members we have would be Kevin and Phil. I do think there's going to be somebody from the schools that is not a transportation advisory committee that I would certainly put forward as a member. So that would leave 2 more spots. Are there any thoughts to 5 or 7? I mean, I guess I could entertain a motion and we could vote one way or the other.
Meryl?
Sorry,
I don't have a real feeling about number, but I was going to just add that perhaps someone from the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail should be included, because they've been such active participants in biking in Concord. I don't have any objection to either 5 or I think 7 if there are projects. I mean, in terms of keeping track of things, 7 would perhaps make more sense, but you know, I don't have strong feelings.
Okay. All right. Does someone want to make a motion?
So
I'll make a mo-
if we
Yes,
have a
Paul.
committee, that seems to be the consensus. So that's
What's
my,
that?
I'll move to have a 5-member subcommittee.
Yeah.
I second that.
Okay, so in terms of discussion on the motion, so Phil has made the motion for a 5-member committee. Kevin has seconded it. I guess what I would say is, since this is something still relatively new, I'm comfortable saying I would vote for a 5-member committee for now. And if we decide that 5 members is too limiting, and there's consensus that we just need more, I was gonna say boots on the ground, but maybe it's wheels on the ground in this case. Then I think we've reserved the right to expand it further down the line. So that's my comment. Are there any other comments on the motion?
Yes, I think that there are many groups that are around town, many committees that are already addressing bicycle issues. And so this committee may also want to reach out to those other committees. I know that the Trails Committee is dealing with biking issues, as well as the Bruce Rubin Rail Trail, as well as recreation and some other existing town boards and committees, so that it may be really valuable to do some initial outreach. And I know so many people are interested in this topic. So I too would support 5, and if there's a need to go up to 7, I would support that.
Anything else on the motion? Okay, I'll call for a roll call vote. Fortunately, everyone's moved around on my screen. So Kevin,
Yes.
Phil,
Aye.
Steve,
Yes.
Merrill,
Yes.
Aaron,
Yes.
Marcia.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well done. So we now have an expanded bicycle subcommittee.
Can I make one other comment, Mr. Town Manager?
Yes.
So everybody who gets on this subcommittee gets this book. So whoever is watching this on video, they can expect to receive this from me.
I hope it's under $50 because we're all special municipal employees.
On Amazon. I won't tell you how incredibly cheap it is, but I will.
All right. All right. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The next item is actually a good news thing that I'm going to turn over to Marcia. Is the Shared Streets grants, and for those who we had this opportunity for a Shared Streets grant, and we kind of jumped on it kind of quick, and we worked with the Commonwealth to figure out what types of projects would benefit would benefit from it, but also be most competitive. And so I'll let Marcia describe the project that we chose and the scope that we're looking at.
Well, it was the 3rd round of the Shared Streets grant. And yes, we did do some outreach and addressing existing safety improvements on existing streets, as well as improving mobility, were the 2 issues that we addressed through this grant. And it was due in late May, and we heard about it just before the 4th of July, that we've been approved for a little over $92,000 to make improvements along Old Marlborough Road, to modify the existing rectangular rapid flashing beacons along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail between Cottage Street and Upland, to add a new beacon at the Williams Road intersection, to update to provide a solar-powered pole-mounted radar speed feedback sign between Harrington Ave and Williams Road, right on Old Marlborough Road, and to replace the outdated school zone flashing lights with a solar-powered system. In addition, we were approved for a bike share program with installation in West Concord near the commuter rail station, as well as at the Concord Visitor Center. So we're promoting the visitor experience and encouraging bicycling around town. So I'm delighted, and Steve Dukran and Aaron Stevens were instrumental in helping prepare that grant. So I thank them both for their efforts.
And I think I don't know, did Beth Williams pitch in on that on the visitor center component?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, you did as well.
Yes, team effort, but it was something that we had talked about. Old Marlborough Road was something we talked about here, and I would have loved to have said, "Hey, let's digest what we're thinking about." But the grant had a tight deadline, and we had talked about Old Marlborough Road, and we said this, it's not going to fix. There aren't many like 100% fixes, but I think the scope that Marcia just laid out, I think will greatly improve conditions out there. So I guess I want to thank Marcia and the folks that participated in writing that grant, but also I want to thank the residents of Old Marlborough Road, as well as this committee, for kind of bringing those issues forward and putting them front and center. What we're just talking about here is an example of how this committee is supposed to work. I think it's a good success, and we don't spend a lot of time talking about the things that go well. So I wanted to spend a minute saying that we can go from concept to execution pretty nimbly because of how this group is built. Any questions, comments on the grant? And I think it's a tight timeline to have it completed. So this is not going to be one of those. Yeah, it's a pretty tight timeline to have it completed. So you'll see stuff happening in the near future. Yeah. Yes, Phil?
So I just want to say congratulations to Marcia and thank you very much. I think that's really terrific. And also to Aaron and to Steve. I think it's really terrific work and we really appreciate what you've done. And thank you. I know a lot of people will really appreciate what you've accomplished. And I'll get you a book, I promise. And you too, Aaron.
Any other comments about that? So, okay, great. Thank you again. Thanks, everybody. So the next one is Steve Dukin's going to talk about the Commonwealth Ave Complete Streets project. This is obviously a West Concord project. So Steve, do you want to take us through this?
Yes. So what I'll do, I'll share my screen if you allow me, Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
I have a short presentation that
Okay.
I can find it here. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, this was given to the West Concord Advisory Committee on the 2nd of June. So I'll just quickly go through it. And so the reason why we bring this to the committee is twofold. One is to update the committee on the project, as well as to discuss the comments that came out of the West Concord Advisory Committee meeting, how we have addressed those comments, and sort of get this committee's final blessing so that we can move forward with this project. You would see the schedule that we have. It does have a deadline, and we cannot afford to miss the deadline because the project is being funded partially by the Complete Streets grant. And if you don't meet the deadlines, obviously you're compromising getting reimbursed. So the project area, this shot here shows it goes from Church Street near the railroad tracks to a little bit past the 2nd Beharrell Street entrance. So it ends just before you meet the Lawsbrook intersection. I'll give you a quick background. In 2018, the town adopted a complete streets policy. Then in 2019, the town
Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Sorry, I hope you are hearing me. Yes. So in 2019, the town developed a prioritization plan for the complete streets projects. And then in 20, we received the grant for 3 of those projects, including this one. Then we signed an agreement with the Mass Department of Transportation. So that's how a deadline was set for completion. We spent several months last year securing funding for design because the grant doesn't pay for design, it pays only for construction. So we did get the funding and we developed a design contract. And then in January of this year, we executed a contract with the Engineering Corporation or Tech to do the design. And then in April, TEC submitted conceptual plans, which is what we brought to the West Concord Advisory Committee on the 2nd of June. And then the deadline I'm talking about is September 30 of next year. This year is the design. I will show you some of the improvements that this design is calling for. We're looking at completely reconstructing the sidewalk from this Beharrell Street intersection here to almost to the railroad tracks on the north side. And similarly on the south side, a complete reconstruction of the sidewalks. Those sidewalks are in, even though the surface might be in pretty good shape, they're vastly sloping beyond ADA standards. And so they have to be rebuilt entirely to meet ADA. The sidewalks will be, by the time all is said and done, between 10 to 11 feet wide. And today they're somewhat uneven. We're going to try to standardize the width out there. If I bring in a little closer on this plan here. It does show, and we had shown this to the advisory committee, it does show some grass strips, you know, this concrete sidewalk and grass to the curb line. In speaking with Aaron from Highways, the grass would not survive, and we agree with that. Not in an area where you have heavy pedestrian traffic. And so what we will do, we will eliminate the grass, but we will choose locations to do some kind of a vegetation planting, maybe, you know, raised planters. Probably could get a couple of trees in there instead. So that will be in the final design. The other improvements we want to do is to bring the curbing at the right height. Today, if you go out there, you'd see the curb reveal is very low. And by reconstructing the sidewalk and putting new curbing, we get to the right height, which is usually 6 to 7 inches of protection of pedestrians on the sidewalk. We're going to be improving the crosswalks. So I want to talk crosswalks for a minute. The plan that we present to the West Concord Advisory Committee had moved the crosswalk further west. And the designer, TEC, had chosen to do that because they had, in order to reduce the cost, if you're going to put a crosswalk, you want to make sure it's as safe as possible. And because you have parking on both sides, you want to do bump outs like these. And when you do bump outs, then you introduce, you know, new drainage. And so they chose a location where you wanted to reduce the amount of drainage work and to reduce the cost. And so we brought that to the committee, and the committee said, no, that wouldn't work. The crosswalks have to stay where they are. This one at Bradford Street, and then one over here at Beharrell. And so went back to the design and they said, okay, let's see what we can do. The one at Bradford Street, they can retain it at the location, but doing a bump out only on one side of the street, on the north side. And the south side will be pretty much as it is, with a little bit of relocation, but it essentially will serve the purpose as that it does today. The other one over here, the other Beharrell Street intersection, today diagonally across the street here. TEC believes that it's better served to put it on this location here where you have a driveway and you can do a bump out on this side and not impact any, the number of spaces. The other reason for putting it this side is that the sidewalk here on Behara is a complete sidewalk. On the opposite side, it just gets to a point where it goes into a building. So they think the pedestrian path is more direct in this location. So by making these changes, we believe we have satisfied the comments that were brought up by the advisory committee. And hopefully this will not be an issue any further. I want to point out some more of the improvements. Further down, I don't have it in this plan, but I have it in the presentation. You'll see a new crosswalk over here at the end of Church Street. So in the event that a pedestrian on this side of Ave wants to go straight across the tracks, they can continue walking and use this crosswalk. So that's in addition we'll be seeing in this project. The width of pavement there is not wide enough to accommodate bicycle lanes. So what we'll be doing, we'll be adding bicycle symbols for share the road, as well as signs. Hopefully, the nature of the street does allow the use or the philosophy of sharing the road. You know, I'm sure you hear from Phil about the difficulty in dealing with heavy pedestrian traffic when it comes to bicycles. But if at all we could lose parking, then we'll be able to do a separate bike lane, but not in this location. What else do we have here? Aside from making the sidewalks themselves ADA compliant in terms of slope, all these handicap ramps will be ADA compliant. It's always difficult to try to correct these in existing situations. With the bump outs, you get an additional space to make the ramp as they're required to be. The design has been challenging for TEC, trying to match, the building entrances. That's always a problem, but they have been working at it, changing the profile of the street, the cross section, and so hopefully in the end everything will work out well. The schedule. We're hoping to complete the design this summer. So by fall, we've advertised the project for construction bidding. We want to have some construction done this year, given that there'll be impacts to businesses, the accesses, the pedestrians, traffic. So in this fall, we want to get any underground work done. There would be some utility work, some drainage, and if we get all of that done, we can start some of the sidewalk reconstruction. And just patch the street for the winter time, take us into the through the winter, and next spring and summer come back and go at it, finish all of the curbing, the sidewalk, and then doing a mill and overlay of the pavement. The pavement is deteriorating. We don't want to address that now with any new pavement until this work is done next year. And so we'll mill overlay that section of Ave, and then we'll do the pavement markings, reinstalling the parking, the crosswalk, the stop bars, and the shared road bicycle symbols, as well as the railroad crossings. And want to complete the project by the date I mentioned before, September 30. Here's what we have for construction estimate. The TEC has come up will cost us $250,000. From the complete streets, we get about 110,000. Developer escrow is going to give 100 plus or minus thousand, and the additional 40 will come from another road capital account. Hopefully that's what we'll get for a bid. Construction costs have been rising. We've seen that in some projects. Others, like for pavement, they've been coming in right on target. I don't know if that pattern would remain, but I think we can expect at least the project to come in at $250,000. So we'll be prepared to deal with that situation sometime in the fall when we get the bids back. All right, and if you have any questions, don't call me, call this guy, Justin Richardson. He's the project manager. Any questions?
Any question? I don't know if I can't see everybody.
I can stop share.
Oh, Mary, you have a question?
Yes, I'd like the project manager, if possible, just to come to the our disability commission, just to review the plan on where the handicap parking spaces and the cut throughs will be, just so that mistakes can be avoided. Is it possible for someone to just come to our next meeting and just review that?
Yes, we can arrange for that.
When is your next meeting, Meryl?
It's the, let's see, it's the second Thursday of the month. So the August, I believe, I don't have my calendar here. Let's see.
That would be August 12th is the second Thursday.
Yes, at
And
five,
you meet at 5 o'clock, is it?
yes, on Zoom. Mhm. And if there's any change, I will, I can certainly let you know. I can check with Jean Goldsberry, our chair, and make sure that that's accurate.
And
Would that be okay?
Yeah, we will we'll have him contact you all to get on the agenda.
Great. Thank you.
Any other question? Go ahead, Phil.
you're on mute, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Steve, could you just go back again and show us the layout of the project? I'm just not clear about where it begins and where it ends.
Can you see this?
Yeah,
So it begins here at Church Street,
okay,
and it goes a little bit past the second Beharrell Street intersection towards Lothbrook.
It doesn't cross Beharrell though.
Well, this what I have up on the screen doesn't cross, but the limit itself is a little bit beyond.
Okay.
You know, for paving and that kind of thing. You
But
show
it doesn't- but it
another
doesn't
say,
go all the way to where Commonwealth turns and Kenneth Dunn Square, the triangle area.
right. It doesn't get there. It has to do more with budget, you know, trying to address where the biggest needs are.
all right. Okay, well, it is what it is. Maybe, you know, at some point, the intersection with Commonwealth and Lawsbrook is, the pavement is pretty bad and it's kind of a dangerous intersection. So maybe at some point we can revisit that. Hopefully in the not too distant future.
All right, so let me talk about that. So the project I'm showing has to do with the complete streets improvements. We will be, and the budget I showed is for the complete streets improvements. That budget doesn't include what we'll be doing with the pavement. That will be done through our roads program, which we have put this on our roads program for next year. And if needed to extend because of the pavement deterioration, we will do that through the roads program.
Yeah, there are a number of things out there. The pavement is deteriorated. There's no crosswalks, so sidewalks aren't linked on I guess it's the eastern side of Commonwealth Avenue leading to that. What's it called, Marcia? What's the name of that square?
Kenneth Dunn Square.
Yeah, Kenneth Dunn, right. Okay. One other question. At this point in time, we're waiting for the designer to come up with signage and that type of thing with respect to cars and bicycles on that strip. Is that right?
Yes, I would expect they'll be using the standard MUTCD signage.
Okay. Yeah, maybe we can revisit that once they come up with something, because that's both sections of Commonwealth Avenue, both meaning this little stretch and the stretch over by Woods Hill Table are really narrow. So for a bicyclist, you really have to be in the center of the lane in order to ride safely, because otherwise you could get hit by a car door. At the same time, motorists don't necessarily understand what's going on. They get impatient, they honk at people. By the same token, cyclists need to understand the pedestrians have the right of way. So just a lot of stuff going on, and maybe we can have a conversation about trying to educate the public so that it's safe and comfortable for everybody.
Okay. Any other questions from committee members?
I have
Let's see.
a question. Could I say something?
I'm asking for questions for committee members first.
And I just wanted to mention that we do have three people perhaps from the West Concord Advisory Committee. So they provided input back in June at their last meeting. And I think these plans do reflect many of the comments heard. Delighted to see the direction that TEC has gone with the plan. So thank you, Steve, and please extend the thanks to Justin for his work.
Sure. If there's no other questions or comments from the committee, I think Amy Kaiser had her hand up first. So name and address.
Yeah, so I'm Amy Kaiser. I'm at 294 Commonwealth Avenue. I'm chair of the West Concord Advisory Committee, speaking for myself today, but trying to share some comments that committee members relayed to me today, as well as a member of the public who weren't sure they were going to be able to join us. So I'll do my best. The first thing I wanted to...
I should say, we've been kind of holding comments till the public comment portion of the meeting. I don't know if you have questions. We're just about done. We're just about at that phase. So if you could hang on. If you have a question, I think we can about the project. We could do that now. But otherwise, I'd ask that you just hold off on comments so we get the public comment.
Absolutely. My one actual question was regarding contingencies. And I was just curious, are the contingencies noted for this project typical? Or is that a wider cushion than we typically would include? Just out of curiosity.
So the answer is, Ms. Kaiser, that it's what you saw there was 10% for construction and 10% for police. Well, 10% for police is, I mean, it's really, I think that's a given. But the 10% for construction, hopefully that does cover the inflation I was referring to. Yep. But at this stage, seeing that these are just preliminary plans, 10% is appropriate. If we still talk about a concept, we probably talk about 20% as a contingency. By the time a final estimate is done, it'll be probably down to like 3 to 5%, whatever the engineer is more comfortable with.
Well, there's also field uncertainties that sometimes you have to plan in for, like with Steve talked about the heights of the building entryways and things like that. And so, yeah, I think it's better, but more than less contingency is better.
Thank you.
So just hang in there for your comment. Ann Sussman, do you have a question or a comment?
I have both, but I'll ask the question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Ann Sussman, 534 Old Marlborough Road, new member of WCAC. I do bike to the mill, and so I'm going down that street almost every day, and I want to know, what is the actual speed limit there? It's really unclear to me. Can you tell me what it is?
On Commonwealth Ave?
Yeah, right in the place that you are doing the new street initiative. What is the speed limit?
I don't know offhand, but I may have seen a 25 mile per hour posted. I may have seen that, I think.
It's either 20 or 25 is
Yeah,
what's posted. It's not what's normal.
I don't have the facts here, but it is a little confusing. And as a biker there, like 3 times a week, I bike here. It's pretty crazy. And what Phil was saying, I'm kind of responding to what Phil just said. It gets a little harrowing because cars sometimes do whiz around you. So I would argue that with this, it might be something to explore. I don't know the facts, obviously. It might be good as part of this Create Better Streets initiative that we really post clear speed limits. And we do like they're doing in the city of Cambridge, where anything with this kind of dense development is 20 miles per hour. As you now know, 75% of the streets in the city of Cambridge are 20 miles per hour because you can't have speed and safety. So right now, because I'm not clear what the speed limits are, and I live here, so it's not clear. So to make it a real safe street, we got to make the speed limits clear, and we have to have them as low as possible. That's my point of view, but I'm not an expert. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay, so your comment then is made as well.
Yeah, no, I have another comment, but I'll do that.
Okay. All right. If there's no other comments, or sorry, if there's no other questions about the project, or any further comment from committee members, I would move on from here and thank Steve for his presentation. So seeing none, the next thing is committee correspondence. I don't know if there is any. I do think, Aaron, do we have any that you're aware of?
Nothing additional.
Nothing additional, okay. Liaison comment, Terry?
Not really. Thank you for all the work that you are doing. Good topics today.
Good, thanks. And then, okay, so public comment, and I guess I would say I would go with Dory first. She did want to make a comment earlier. So Dory, name and address. And unmute first.
Okay, it's unmuted now. First of all, I'm glad that the signs are finally going to appear. I think that we had hoped they would be able to be done a little more nimbly so that we would have more time to see how well they work. I think that the jury is out on that. We did do some testing, which I think you're aware of, and when the signs are up, we'll be doing more testing. That is a informal group of people who are trying to get an idea of how the signs are followed. So we'll be anxiously awaiting the signs. I hope that they'll be done in time to be able to see if they're working so that we can then look at other alternatives during the summer months. But beyond that is a question, maybe a week or so, a month ago, someone pointed out to me that on the town website, the GIS, it shows the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail going all the way through Junction Park, the whole central part. And is this something that happened? It's most peculiar. Those of us who were part of the renovation of Junction Park never heard that talked about. There was question about where the rail trail crossing would be, and there was no answer given from the people who were the designers of the rail trail. And so I'm wondering how that ever came to be. And secondly, is my understanding is that the town does not own that side, the whole of the town rents, I guess, or has a 100-year lease from the MBTA. So if this was made some arrangement to make this part of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, was the MBTA brought into that conversation? And was there any public discussion of this?
I don't know, Marcia, if you want to weigh in, that's a little before my time. I do know that it is a part of the rail trail, just by how it lays out in the field. So it was clearly built
It's
to be incorporated.
one very odd thing is, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
I mean, the plans that I saw did show the like the original design plan showed the trail going through the pathway, if you will, of the trail going through Junction Park. But I mean, maybe we can follow up with a more detailed answer because it's, I don't know, Marcia, if you have something briefly.
No, I'm sorry. May I share my screen?
Sure.
Okay. Back when Greenman Peterson was ready to design the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, they went to engineering, Concord Public Works Engineering, to coordinate. And at that time, they were told that when the improvements were made to Junction Park, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail was incorporated into, because this path, this very wide path, was designed to accommodate both pedestrians and cyclists. So we were not permitted or allowed to make any changes to Junction Park as part of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail design. They were informed that the designer was informed to end the pavement at the park and that people would be directed to go through the park to exit through the park at Main Street. That was the direction provided by Concord Public Works. And that's what was part of the construction package. So you'll notice that the line striping stops at the edge of the park because they didn't want any pavement or painting on the pavers through the park and exiting through here. This section is not owned by the MBTA. It is owned by the Mass DOT, Executive Office of Transportation, and was not part of a conversation with the MBTA. The MBTA owns this piece and the railroad right-of-way of the commuter rail. And the license agreement was for the park, but the Bruce Freeman was part of that conversation. So there was no separate conversation. And again, the direction came from Concord Public Works about how to design through Junction Park. Thank you.
I hope that clarifies.
It's very interesting that I've talked with the people from the West Concord Green Thumbs who worked with the Concord Engineering Department, most of the time under Bill Renault, and asked if any one of them ever remembered any discussion of this, and nobody ever does. And these are people who have no reason to say anything other than the truth. The people who picked out the pavers, and Marcia's right, we don't want it to be painted on because they're impervious, whichever the word is, the water can get through. But we asked through engineering to go to Greenman Peterson and Marcia and say, what are your plans for getting across the railroad track? What are your plans for bikes to get across the railroad track when they enter into West Concord at Main Street? And the answer was, we're working on it. We're working on it. And so when the park was opened in, I think it was 2013, there was not a word spoken about anything about bikes or about the rail trail going through there. This is extremely distressing to have somebody point out to me what is shown. And I don't know how to show my screen, but it shows that the whole of the center part is part of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. That wasn't even done until after the park was completed, when the rail trail was extended at the Woods Hill parking lot to be parallel to the railroad track. There's a narrow path there that goes parallel to the railroad track. Apparently that was worked out, and apparently there must have been some deal made by somebody and nobody has any record of it. So it would be, you can't fight City Hall, I guess is probably true. But at this point, I would like to know how this happened without any discussion of the people who were most involved. That wide swath was designed by a member of the West Concord Green Thumbs who specifically wanted that because it would make it open and inviting. So somehow this has happened. And now if one looks on the GIS, you will see that the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail is shown as going all the way through Junction Park. My concern and the concern of many of us is about bikes and the safety of bicyclists and of pedestrians. And when we began this discussion with you all, we had, I think, 6 or 7 letters from various West Concord groups, the Children's Center, the Centers for the Assisted Living. And there's a lot of concern about this. And now to find, oh, hey, this is part of the bike trail. And in the memos which are sent out from the bike trail in their magazine, which goes out to members, it shows that there's going through Junction Park, but it doesn't show Junction Park, it shows it beside it. And nobody's ever been able to figure out where is this mythical route. So it's extremely distressing. It makes it very difficult to find a solution. I would like to find out if the Mass Department, thank you, Marcia, for your correction that that's not the MBTA, but Mass Department of Transportation, if this was discussed with them, if on this grant or use of land, was that ever discussed and by whom? And was there any public discussion in the town of Concord? This is not the way we usually do business here. It's been a very difficult place, a very difficult park. The extension of Junction Park had to be redone. And I'm not sure if you're aware of that, Stephen, but that had a cost, I believe, of what the former town manager said was over $100,000 because it was not designed properly. And so
Excuse
the
me,
extension
Lori.
was not
Oh,
designed.
hang on. I think we're in public
digressing.
comment.
We're digressing.
We're heavily digressing.
We are.
What happens in the past? I think we could do some research on that. I think Marcia has tried to do that, but it's there. It's there today by virtue of an agreement that exists. I'm assuming with a license agreement between the T and possibly Mass DOT, and we can certainly review those documents.
Please.
Whether or not public discussion was held or not, I can't testify that. It's obviously well before my time, but it is there today. And your communication in others about the concerns about safety with cyclists and pedestrians in Junction Park, we have taken very much to heart and spent a lot of time on. In fact, it's taken longer because we thought we weren't sure we were supposed to bring it back for final review or not. And then it's, well, where are they? So there was a little confusion on our part about when we were supposed to start them. And that's, we thought we just better make sure we do a demonstration of them just to make sure everybody's on board. And then we'll we'll do the data collection, but we're doing that. Like that is actually happening. So I guess what I would say is we'll have to save this for a future, maybe an offline conversation about it. I don't think it's going to be something the Transportation Advisory Committee takes up as a cause because it's there.
I know it. Thank you for that. And I appreciate, I would very much really like to find out though, how this became about. I think and thank you for, I'm assuming that I'm understanding correctly that you are going to undertake to find that out. And if the Department of Transportation is aware of this and that was run through them.
And we can take a look at what documents we have in hand and see what we can do to track that. But if it was done by phone calls or emails or something, I mean, that's a little trickier. So especially for people who are no longer here. And probably aren't at Mass DOT anymore either. I mean, it's so we will do some investigation.
I thank you very much.
Sure. Okay. Other public comments. I guess I'll go back to you, Amy.
Thanks so much. Just making sure I'm off mute. So again, I'm Amy Kaiser from 294 Commonwealth Avenue, Chair of the West Concord Advisory Committee, but speaking for myself today, but also hoping to share some comments that were brought to me over the course of the day. And I'll be brief. I've got to run and pick up my kids in 4 minutes. But I do want to start by saying thank you to the town, to the planning team and the engineering team for sharing the plans for Commonwealth Avenue rehabilitation with us in June with the West Concord Advisory Committee. And thank you so much for listening to those comments and responding to them. I think I'm very pleased to see the crosswalks and the locations those feel much more responsive to demand lines as we think about how people are moving and shopping and using the street today. So I think that's a hugely positive development. So thank you for incorporating the bump outs. We know, we know that budget is limited for this project, and I think those will also be a welcome addition. On the grass strip, I did hear from others and share some questions about, given the relatively limited space on those sidewalks. It's good to hear they'll be 10 to 11 feet, for a commercial area with a lot of pedestrian traffic, with people moving the strollers, moving in opposite directions, people sitting on benches. It's hot real estate, let me say. So I think it would be a suggestion to. I think trees would be a welcome addition. I think the benches are really well used on Commonwealth Avenue, and allowing more space for those rather than grass on this strip on the stretch of Commonwealth Avenue where we're, already looking to, and I think this project will continue to, moderate speeds of traffic. I think, in my estimation, that would be a better use of that real estate. More space for people to walk through, more space for benches, space for a couple trees would all be more welcome in my mind than grass. So I wanted to share that. And I also wanted to echo the comment, which I heard from others over the course of today and share myself of, if not within the budget of this project, additional attention, hopefully not too long down the road, to the intersection of Commonwealth Avenue and Losbrook, where, there's certainly lots of demand for a crosswalk that will only grow as use of the Bruce Freeman Trail increases, and as, the Giroux Recreation Area becomes a destination. And I think satisfying that desire line in a way that's safe would be great. There's no good way to cross in that area today. So I will stop there. Thank you again for the comments, and I hope you'll take into consideration the additional comments we've shared today.
Thank you for hanging in there with us in the comments. So,
thanks.
Mark,
Sorry,
I'm
I'll
going to
disappear in a moment.
Ann Sussman.
Oh, hi. I'll just second what Amy just said. Thank you so much for listening to us, and thank you for putting the crosswalks there. Stevens, we owe you, both Stevens here, and thank you so much. It's going to be better. I am, as a bicyclist though, who does navigate that street, I am very worried about the speed, and that people coming from Route 2 don't expect to suddenly be going 20 miles per hour. So maybe a posted speed zone there, something to consider of 20 miles per hour on either side, so they know that you'll have a lot of people there. Anyway, thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks for the comments. I think Richard had his hand up first. Sorry, Mark.
Hi, it's Richard Follander, 399 Old Bedford Road. I'm also co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee. I have two comments, one just totally related to the speed study, which I agree is a good idea. But I think for the in the short term, there are instances, and I could point them out to you on both Lexington Road and Old Bedford and on Bedford Street, where there are different speed limits depending which direction you're going. And the signs are almost parallel to each other. I would suggest that whenever the speed limit is lower in one direction, it be lowered to the lower speed limit in the other direction. I don't think that requires a big study or a consultant to do that. There are times when the speed limit seems to, on Lexington Road especially, goes up to 40 only to go right back down to another speed limit. So if someone just drove around and made a consistent speed limits, I think that would be one small step towards consistency. And as personally, I'm in favor of lower speed limits. So that is one suggestion. The other is co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Committee. it indicated at our last meeting, Terry Ackerman was our liaison at the time. Thank you, Terry, that the Transportation Advisory Committee would be addressing the Reformatory Branch Trail issue related to the Bedford paving of their portion and the Minuteman Trail. I just want to check to see if is going to be the case.
It is, and you and I actually had a direct conversation about this out on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, which I said I think that project is still a number of years away, but we will definitely take that up.
I mean, Bedford is 100% designed. They expect the construction to be 2023, so I don't think it's that far away. Whatever, but so am I correct in saying that this will be on the agenda of the committee here at some point?
Yep.
Okay,
that's correct. Yep. Okay, so then I did see Mark from the flight deck. Mark.
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you to the committee and the chair.
Name and address.
Mark Gale is 62 Prescott Road. Thank you, everybody. Great meeting. A lot of good stuff. I want to mention one thing in connection with Junction Park and then talk about the minutes correction and clarification. Related, but not exactly the same as what Dory was saying, I do think it would be beneficial because this area is complicated and the public would like to understand and people may have ideas to submit. If at some point, either in the West Concord Advisory Commission or in this committee, there was a presentation of the facts on the ground right now in terms of jurisdictions, ownership, possibilities for evolutionary improvement, tweaking of bike paths, pedestrian protection, etc. It's not, I really appreciate that certain things are being done fast, which can be done fast. Some things may take much longer. And it'd be nice for the public and everybody to be on the same page as far as what are the constraints, both legal and financial. Thank you. Separately, I appreciate Manager Crane's comments about not setting an unworkable precedent for tweaking minutes and public comment minutes, but it's a challenge for anyone taking minutes to accurately summarize and convey the meaning of things. It has to be a summary, not just a transcription. But I feel that in this particular case, one of Tanya's comments and one of my comments are recorded in a way that actually misrepresents them and makes it seem almost the opposite of what they were. So with regard to Tanya's comment and a clarification, and we both appreciate the committee's decision, your suggestion to look at our letters, which will explain things more clearly and let the committee decide what to actually, whether to make a change or what change to make to the minutes next time. As far as Tanya's comment, what she was really saying here was expanding the bicycling committee was a good idea and it would avoid certain OML risks. She did not say that all bike to school committee discussions violated OML, and her comments that you will see in her email will explain that in more detail. My comments, to kind of clarify it, maybe the way I spoke was a little unclear, but I think if you look at the transcript I put in my message, you'll understand that I do not advocate rushing the process with respect to the Reformatory Branch Trail. Rushing to an engineering study can prejudice the results in a negative way. That's what I'm saying. Don't rush to an engineering study that prejudices the results. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment, Mark. Mr. Flint.
Thank you. Burton Flint, 1643 Main Street. I'm the chair of the planning board, but just speaking on my own behalf. I wanted to add on the Commonwealth Improvement Project. I was very happy to see the changes. They were much more in line with the recommendation of the planning board done in 2014 in a memo to your predecessor, Mr. Crane, that was at that time when a proposed redesign was done, and that's great to see. Another point that was raised in that memo was making sure we were preserving more parking spaces than it had been originally proposed in the redesign. And I missed how many parking spaces actually are being lost in the revised plan. Back in 2014, the planning board was saying, don't lose more than 6. It looks like it's less than that even here. So I guess just the emphasis on being able to preserve those as much as possible. And then as the project proceeds, I'm thinking about businesses who are just coming through the worst retail environment probably in the town's history. And now we're talking about digging up the sidewalks and the streets in front of their businesses. And I would hope, as part of the work that's done, an outreach program is done, signs are put up to direct people to alternative parking, for example, and signage is done during the pendency of the construction, because these are businesses that are obviously, that some of them are hanging on by their fingernails. So that would be very appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the comment. I don't know, Steve, do you know off the top of your head how many spaces were lost?
Yes. Should I mention 8? No, it's actually 2. We're losing 2 spaces. And I think we can work with the designer to kind of reclaim one of those. But it's up to them, and they could stamp the plans. And we are very considerate about the impact to the businesses. And that's why we're trying to stretch this construction over sort of a 2-season time frame. It's not a very big project. You probably could get it done within 1, but because of trying to preserve access as best as we can, working with the businesses and so on, we're trying to spread it out. It does come at an additional cost. Any contractor bidding on this would put in more for the operating in a more less than efficient way, I would say.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, if there's no further public comment, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second the.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Okay, roll call votes. Kevin?
Here.
Yes.
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Meryl?
Yes.
Marcia?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
And Phil?
Yes.
All right, sorry, we went a little long, everyone. Sorry about that. I haven't set the next meeting. Vacation schedules in August, I think, are going to be tough. So I may look ahead to September, but I want to review what things need follow-up. So just check your inboxes for a future date.
Thank you.
Thanks.